You know that feeling, right? Where you're just dragging yourself into work, tissues clutched in one hand, maybe a giant coffee in the other, telling yourself, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah. Been there.
You're sneezing, maybe coughing a bit, but you are absolutely determined to power through.
Eh?
It feels, I don't know, kind of like a modern badge of honor sometimes. This whole idea of showing up no matter what.
Yeah.
I know I've certainly done it more times than I'd like to admit. Have you?
Definitely. It's a scenario I think we're all way too familiar with. And that brings us to the core question we really want to dive into today. What actually happens when we ignore those signals from our body? You know, push through the illness, not just for us individually, but what about for our teams, our whole organization?
Right. The ripple effect.
Exactly. So, in this deep dive, we're going to pull out the key insights from, well, a whole collection of sources, studies, articles, expert commentary. The idea is to reveal the hidden costs and maybe some smarter solutions too. Our mission, really, is to see what the data actually says about presenteeism. That's, you know, working while sick compared to absenteeism, which is just staying home.
It really is striking, isn't it, how deep this sick day stigma still runs in so many workplaces. Even with all the talk about wellness and flexibility, there's still this like underlying pressure. Just keep going. And honestly, remote work, I mean, it's great in lots of ways, but hasn't it kind of blurred the lines even more between actual work and proper rest?
Absolutely.
It's just so easy now to just, grab the laptop from bed and pretend everything's normal.
You've hit on a key point there, the blurred lines.
Yeah.
And our sources really dig into why so many employees feel like they have to push through. It's often quite complex, a mix of things.
Like what?
Well, guilt, for one. Feeling bad about taking time off. Then there's the fear of being judged, seen as lazy.
Yeah, I get that.
Or just plain old worry about the workload piling up while you're gone. And this creates a real challenge, a sort of tightrope walk for HR and for leadership, too. They're trying to keep things productive.
Right.
But also show some genuine empathy, some understanding. And look, this isn't just gut feeling. There's a pretty striking statistic here from a 2022 report by the CIPD, that's the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development in the UK.
Yep.
It found that a huge 83% of employees admitted they'd worked while unwell.
83%.
Yeah. And the main reasons they gave, pressure.
Yeah.
And concerns about their workload.
83%. That's massive. Do the sources say anything about, like, if certain industries or company cultures are worse for this? Or is it just everywhere?
That's a really good question. The CIPD report itself doesn't slice it by industry specifically, but it does stress that how common it is links directly to that perceived pressure and workload. And that pressure, well, it can exist pretty much anywhere in any sector.
Sure.
So the overarching message from the sources seems to be, this isn't just an isolated thing, it's a widespread cultural issue.
Okay, so that pressure is real. But let's put the culture bit aside for a second. What's actually happening inside us, physically, mentally, when we decide to push through anyway?
Right, let's get into the immediate impact. And the effects are pretty significant, actually. First off, your cognitive performance, it drops. A lot.
You mean more than just feeling a bit foggy?
Oh, yeah. We're not just talking fuzzy thinking. Studies show measurable things like slower reaction times, memory lapses. You're simply not thinking as clearly as you probably think you are. You often make more mistakes. Second, you're piling physical stress onto your body, which naturally just makes recovery take longer. Your immune system's already working overtime, right?
Yeah.
Pushing it can lead to complications, things like sinus infections, bronchitis, even that horrible post-viral fatigue or brain fog.
Ugh, the brain fog.
Yeah, that feeling of mental slowness, difficulty concentrating, that can hang around for weeks, long after the sneezing stops. And really importantly for everyone else, you become a walking germ transmitter.
Spreading the love.
Exactly, spreading the illness to your coworkers, which just multiplies the negative impact across the whole team. And by the way, all of this stuff, it seriously bumps up your risk of burnout later on and actually leads to more absenteeism down the road.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It really is. And
Yeah.
to put some numbers on it, there was a study, Journal of Occupational Health Psychology. It found that presenteeism working sick actually causes more lost productivity than just being absent.
More, really.
More, because you're there, but you're not effective, and you might be making others sick. And then there's a Harvard Business Review article from 2020. It estimated that companies lose something like over $150 billion a year, just from lost productivity linked to sick workers showing up but underperforming.
$150 billion. That's a staggering amount. So with all that immediate impact, is there ever a case where, the short-term win of just being there actually outweighs these costs? Or is the data pretty clear it's always a net negative?
That's a fair question to ask, but the sources, they're pretty consistent on this. The data really points towards it being a net negative almost always. I mean, sure, there might be a perception of dedication. Someone might think, oh, they're so committed.
Right, the hero employee.
Exactly. But the reality, reduced cognitive function, longer recovery time for you, plus the risk of spreading it. It just means that any perceived benefit of being physically present usually comes at a much higher cost than just taking the time to get better.
Makes sense.
And what's really concerning, perhaps, is that this isn't just about one bad cold or one day. What happens over the long haul? What are the sort of cumulative effects if we keep ignoring our body's signals?
Yeah, what are the long-term consequences of just not resting properly?
Well, when we consistently don't rest, we absolutely risk staying sick longer, yes, but it can also spiral into deeper problems. This kind of neglect tends to show up in a few ways, that lingering brain fog we mentioned. Especially post-viral, it can really stick around, impacting cognitive function for weeks, making even, simple tasks feel exhausting. Then there's the chronic stress aspect, the ongoing inflammation in your body, maybe disrupted sleep. It all contributes, and you can get into a state where exhaustion feels normal.
Normalized exhaustion, yeah, I've heard that.
Exactly. And that means you end up consistently operating below your actual potential. Your baseline performance just gets lower over time.
That's worrying.
It is. And think about morale. When employees constantly feel like their health is being compromised by what the workplace expects, well, they can become pretty disengaged, feel unsupported.
Yeah, you'd feel resentful, I imagine.
For sure. And it really hits home when you consider that burnout, it's now officially recognized by the World Health Organization as a legitimate workplace phenomenon.
Right, not just personal stress.
Precisely. It's directly tied to unmanaged chronic stress in the workplace, which just underlines how serious these long-term impacts can be if we don't address the root causes.
Okay, burnout is clearly serious. But is there any discussion in the sources about whether labeling it a workplace phenomenon might shift too much responsibility, like away from individual self-care and onto the employer? Or is it seen more as a shared thing?
That's a really insightful point. The sources tend to emphasize that it's definitely a shared responsibility, but recognizing it as a workplace phenomenon specifically highlights the organizational factors that contribute. Things like, impossible workloads, maybe a lack of control over your work, inadequate support systems. So it doesn't let individuals off the hook for self-care, not at all. But it does put a clear onus on organizations to create environments where self-care isn't just possible, it's actually encouraged, supported even.
Got it. Shared responsibility, but acknowledging the workplace role.
Exactly. So if this cycle of pushing through, getting less done, risking burnout, if that's the costly reality, what's the alternative? How do we shift gears? How can we move towards something more sustainable, healthier, something that actually benefits everyone involved?
Yeah, absolutely. It can't just be on the individual to fix it.
Yeah.
So knowing all this, what are the actionable things? What strategies do the sources suggest for creating that healthier, more productive environment?
Okay, so some key strategies emerge from the sources. A big one is normalizing rest. Smart companies actively create a culture where taking time off to recover isn't just, grudgingly accepted. It's actively encouraged.
How do they do that?
Well, it starts with leadership. Often, leaders visibly modeling taking time off when needed, actively discouraging that hero culture we talked about, maybe through specific internal messages, policies, actions.
Makes sense. Lead by example.
Definitely. Secondly, having robust, supportive sick leave policies. The sources frame this not just as a nice to have, but as smart business. It builds loyalty, improves retention. It shows employees their well-being genuinely matters.
Right, it's an investment.
Precisely. And beyond reacting to sickness, there's promoting proactive immune support, thinking about wellness year-round. Some sources even get practical, highlighting things like making wellness resources easily available.
Like what kind of resources?
Well, one idea mentioned was like a recovery kit concept, maybe a little box with things to help you get better faster. Immune-boosting stuff like vitamin C, zinc, magnesium, maybe some comforting herbal teas, healthy snacks, things that show tangible support for recovery.
Oh, I like that idea. Like an office sweet spot wellness kit.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The point is making employees feel physically supported in their recovery, not just told to take care.
Yeah, and when you frame it that way, providing tools to help people recover faster, it isn't just being kind. It's actually a really strategic move for the business, too.
Yeah.
Better for everyone. I mean, I remember this one time, years ago, I tried to power through what was clearly the flu.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. I literally fell asleep at my desk during a video call. Mortifying and definitely not productive for anyone.
Oh, wow. Case in point.
So, yeah, for you listening right now, if your body is kind of whispering, hey, slow down a bit, please don't wait until it's screaming at you. Try and listen to those quieter signals,
Absolutely, because the work, it can usually wait. It really can. But your health, and by extension, the health and the productivity of your entire team, that can't wait. Prioritizing health isn't weakness. It's actually a fundamental strength for you as an individual and for the whole organization.